The morning sun rose high over the valley of Elah, casting long shadows across two opposing armies. On one hill stood the Israelites, warriors of God, their hearts heavy with fear. And on the other hill, the mighty Philistines, their ranks bolstered by an enormous figure that had already shaken the resolve of Israel's finest. His name was Goliath, a giant towering over 9 feet tall, clad in gleaming bronze armor that glinted like fire under the sun. His spear was the size of a weaver's beam, and his voice rumbled like thunder as he issued a daily challenge. "Send out your best warrior. If he can defeat me, we will be your servants. But if I overpower him, you will bow to us." For 40 days this taunt echoed through the valley, and for 40 days no one dared answer. The Israelites were paralyzed, their heads bowed in shame. Even King Saul, Israel's leader, found himself unable to muster the courage to face the impossible. But the story doesn't end with fear. It begins to change with the arrival of a shepherd named David. David was young, much too young for battle, his brothers often joked, and he wasn't even there as a soldier. He had come from Bethlehem to deliver food to his older brothers and check on their well-being. But as he approached the Israelite camp, he heard the booming voice of Goliath fill the valley once again. He saw grown men, trained warriors, shrinking away from the sound of his challenge, their faces pale. "Why does no one fight him?" David asked, his tone incredulous. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful to the soldiers, but he couldn't comprehend their fear. Who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David's words rippled through the camp, and eventually they reached King Saul. The boy was summoned, and Saul looked at him skeptically. His youth and stature both paltry in comparison to the giant who roared across the valley. "You can't fight him," Saul said, shaking his head. "You're just a boy. He's been a warrior since his youth." But David wasn't discouraged. "Your servant has fought lions and bears to protect his father's sheep," he replied without hesitation. "The same God who delivered me from their claws will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Still doubtful, but moved by David's conviction, Saul offered him armor, heavy, gleaming gear meant to shield a soldier in battle. But David stepped back, shaking his head. "I cannot go in these," he said. "I am not used to them." Instead, David chose something much simpler. He carried his staff, selected 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream, and armed himself with the sling that had served him well during his years of tending sheep. And so, before the eyes of 2 armies, the shepherd boy stepped onto the battlefield, unarmored and unafraid. Goliath scoffed when he saw him approach. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" His laugh boomed across the valley, as if mocking not just David, but the entire Israelite army. "Come closer, boy. I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." But David didn't flinch. Goliath began to advance, a mountain of muscle and arrogance, but David's hand was sure, his aim steady. He swung the sling, releasing the stone with a decisive snap. The silence that followed was deafening. The stone struck the giant squarely in the forehead, sinking deep. Goliath froze, his expression blank, and for a moment everything stood still. Then the giant crumpled to the ground, with a sound like boulders crashing, and lay lifeless in the dust. The armies of Israel erupted in cheers, their stunned disbelief melting into joy as they watched David rush forward. He stood over Goliath's body, taking the fallen warrior's own sword to finish the task. When he raised it triumphantly, the Philistines, once so sure of their superiority, turned and fled, their confidence shattered. Victory belonged to Israel that day. But it wasn't just a victory of skill or strength. It was a victory of faith, the kind of faith that challenges giants and reminds us that no obstacle, no adversary, is bigger than the God we serve. David's story traveled far and wide, inspiring generations to come. He wasn't trained as a warrior, nor was he encumbered by the fears of those who measured themselves against Goliath's might. His courage stemmed from something deeper, a trust in God's power to use the humble and unexpected to achieve the miraculous. And so the boy who stepped onto the battlefield that day became more than just a shepherd or the victor of a single duel. He became a symbol of unwavering faith, a reminder that giants fall not by the strength of man, but by the hand of God.